What screams pretending to be poor? Story 1. I had a classmate at uni who was very rich. She then was able to get a job at Google and worked there for a bit, but decided to throw everything away to move to Brazil and start making music. She was living a hippie-ish lifestyle there, got herself a boy toy, and posted a picture with him with the caption, "I wonder what rich people are doing." In my mind, I said, that. Exactly that. Story 2. Weirdest experience I had with this was watching someone break down sobbing in their 20s about how broke they were. Everything was going to collapse, what they were going to do, etc. Loads of actually broke friends were trying to help them problem solve, find ways to make quick cash, etc. Guess what the problem turned out to be? The custodian for her trust fund mailed her monthly check a week late. Story 3. Always complaining about not having money, but miraculously going on vacation 3 times or more a year. Poor people don't take vacations. Story 4. Had a coworker in the hospital. She'd never had a job before and got hired on our unit as a new grad nurse because her aunt was the CEO of the system. One night we were talking about things we ate in college when we were poor, and she chimes in, "Yeah, sometimes I had to buy my guacamole at Whole Foods." Story 5. My wife's boss is in the village shop and post office. She's 86 and she still runs the post office. He's 92 and delivers papers in his car or on an electric bicycle. They complain when minimum wage goes up, moan about having to pay holiday pay, and only eat expired ready meals from the shop. However, they own 4 houses that they rent and 2 fields that they have refused multiple times to sell to developers. They claim that they can't afford to heat the house or retire, but sit on $2 to $3 million worth of assets. They could have retired in their 50s comfortably. Story 6. When Biden was president, and there was some chatter about raising income tax on high earners, you did see a lot of people saying, sure, we make $450K combined income, but here's why we live pretty much paycheck to paycheck. And their budget is literally $2,000 per month on clothing, $35,000 a year on traveling, $4,000 per month on food, etc. And they still have more money than most left over anyway. Story 7. A friend of a friend complained for years she was broke. She accepted lunch, dinner, bar bills that were paid for by her friends. 2 years into her endlessly complaining about how expensive life was, she proudly told everyone she saved up to $10,000 in the past 2 years and was pondering what she'd do with it. A car or a long travel abroad. Endlessly complaining about how expensive life is, but living the life of your friends is a primal scream pretending to be poor. Story 8. For me, it's someone saying they live paycheck to paycheck, but never actually budget or track their expenses. Story 9. College kids calling themselves poor while living rent-free with full tuition paid and a $500 a week allowance. You're not poor, you just don't have your inheritance yet. Story 10. I'd say all the homesteading you see people doing. They cosplay poor and living off the land when the stove they're cooking on is $8,000 and the cottage is upper $1 million price range. I am poor and have a homestead. It's not aesthetically pleasing if it's not super well funded. Favorite being the chicken coops that cost more than my old Subaru. Story 11. I once paid 3/4 of a fine my friend got for parking in the wrong place because I felt bad for her. She was always saving every penny, and wherever we went, she would bend over backwards to be as cheap as possible. It was seriously penny work, and I think I've seen her stealing a few times. I figured she didn't have much and always felt bad. Later, found out she had literal tens of thousands in her bank account, and she's just extremely greedy. Story 12. All the people on r/poverty finance who admit to making 6 figures and treat the sub as a fun way to save money. Story 13. When someone complains about being broke but they're constantly getting new tattoos, getting their hair done at nice salons, getting their nails done at nice salons, buying new clothes, going out to eat at restaurants, and drinking at bars. Like, yeah, you might be broke after you spend hundreds a month on luxuries. Like, dude, you're not broke. You just don't know how to budget and you're wasting money on unnecessary stuff. Story 14. I knew someone who bought a cheap car because they couldn't be seen driving their luxury sports car. Story 15. I had a friend who insisted his family wasn't wealthy. He came from a family of 7. His parents owned their house, which had enough bedrooms for him and his siblings to have their own rooms, plus extra. They went on family vacations together every year and stayed at pretty swanky hotels and resorts when they did. When all the kids turned 16, they got their own brand new car. But according to him, they weren't well off. Story 16. No visible means of support. This confounded me as a young person, when artsy hipster kids would be broke, yet have a cool apartment or loft, yet no job, or a job like photography, or had a tiny gallery, or rent-controlled apartment. Now, I understand they were bankrolled, but then I just thought they were bad at life. I also had friends who were open about being supported by family money. Some needed to conceal it, and others didn't. Story 17. In my experience, having a safety net you never mention. It's when someone complains about being broke while living in an apartment their parents pay for, or knowing they can quit their job anytime because they have a trust fund they can fall back on. Poverty is a choice for them, a lifestyle aesthetic rather than a survival struggle. Story 18. My business owner friend complains about fear of having to close her business every month. I'm broke. I don't have any money. Yet she owns a house in San Francisco, no mortgage, and has investments that total over $1 million. She says, yes, but that's my father's money. Her parents are dead. It's her money in her bank account. It's her inheritance. Story 19. I met a woman who seemed cool at a writing group, and she kept framing everything as if her family struggled, even though she is a lawyer with no debt and her parents were successful architects. Like, just be honest, dude. I'm not gonna hate you for winning the birth lottery. Story 20. Always complaining about not having any money, but the reason they have no money is because they spent it all on partying and concerts and food and living their best life on social media. Story 21. My cousin called my dad drunk, begging for money while she was having a pool built in her backyard. She's a terrible person. Story 22. Dressing like a hippie any time after the 90s, especially in Portland, Oregon. Met hundreds of these folks during my time in PDX, mostly at parties or DIY events. They always grow out of it at some point, revealing a trust fund prep behind the beads and dreads. Bonus, van lifers, because duh, how else would someone afford a $135,000 vehicle to cosplay homelessness? Story 23. People who talk about it, especially people in their 20s. Not that they're not legitimately poor, but if they're in their 20s and it's a personality trait, odds are they had a comfortable upbringing and have a good inheritance coming their way eventually. Being poor is just an aesthetic. Story 24. I once told someone I couldn't go on a trip with some family because I didn't have the money to do such a thing, because house payment due and groceries, etc. And they were like, yeah, we're broke too, and then decided you only live once. And I was like, yeah, well, I want a place to live. I think our concept of not having money are very different. Story 25. People who say, just ask your parents for it, when an expense comes up, but still complain about being poor. I was talking to a relative from a much more wealthy side of the family who constantly acts like she's on the verge of poverty, about my choice at the time to work full-time rather than go to college. She was flabbergasted that I didn't just ask my parents to give me enough money to go to school. I had to break it to her that my parents barely have enough money to pay their own bills. Story 26. Oh God. Growing up in the 7th richest county in America at the time. I think the biggest problem rich people tend to do is pretend they're not rich because they know someone richer than them. Doesn't matter if they have 6 bedrooms or a private jet, there will always be someone more successful than them. And the rich are the most mentally ill people out there. You can be a schizophrenic on the streets, but you're still not as delusional as a rich kid that doesn't know any better. Story 27. Always going on about their struggles. My spouse grew up dirt poor. Both parents were disabled and they went hungry a lot. Most of their diet consisted of institutionalized food from the food banks that is almost unheard of now. She never mentions it now, even when people whine about their own situations. She will talk about it, but as part of conversation, not as a poor me story. She made the comment one time how fake poor people will always tell you how poor they want to be seen as, and that actual poor people will just try to get by in their own ways. Story 28. Living the simple life by visiting multiple yoga retreats per year in Hawaii, Bali, and Costa Rica. Story 29. Some of the DIY stuff you see. Let's do some basic plumbing. Proceeds to pull out a $1,000 PEX crimping tool. I made these shelves out of some scrap wood recovered from free pallets. Pans across a shop with $20,000 plus worth of equipment. Story 30. The CEO of a company I worked for gave a speech about how it was a hard year for him and he was only able to buy himself one pair of shoes because he bought a second mansion before selling the first that no one would buy at his price, but he had to do it to make his wife happy. I'm not guessing that's what happened. That was all in his speech. He was also sobbing. And that's all the stories for today's video. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And also, leave a comment and tell me how I can make the next video better. Thank you.